You ready?
We're going to continue with the Ross-Town Council meeting. We've been in closed session, and we have nothing to report on the public record. So we'll proceed then to the next item on our calendar, which is item 5, 5-year service acknowledgement for Eric Roby, Senior Building Inspector.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Kircher, members of the council. I'd like to invite Eric to come on up to the podium if you'd be so kind. Eric? Thank you. Thank you. This is so fun, and I'm sorry that our new Planning and Building Director, Roberta Feliciano, is not able to be here this evening because of a family emergency, but it is my pleasure to be able to talk a little bit about how wonderful Eric Robb is. Okay, so I'm going to say a few things, Eric.
Okay.
Get prepared. Okay. Well, Eric has been with the town of Ross for 5 years as our senior building inspector. He came to Ross from all the way over in the town of San Anselmo, where he was the building inspector for 13 years. He earned a degree in economics from Chico State, which I think is very impressive. During his time in Ross, he has helped the town transition from a paper permitting process to a computer-based system that's called Trackit. He was instrumental in the transition of building permit files and plans from hard copy boxes that had to be physically stored to an electronic system that is used daily and is very effective for our customers, town staff, and our partners, such as Ross Valley Fire. He performs inspections and plan examination throughout the day, and he answers many building, mechanical, plumbing, and electrical code questions. He estimates that he has been to and about 50% of the properties in Ross. Is that correct, Eric?
That's correct, yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
He ensures that the project plans that you see here at town council meetings are what is constructed on site. That is no easy feat, as owners and contractors often want to change construction from the approved plans. That occasionally happens, right? When he's not working, Eric enjoys the outdoors, hiking, and finding new hidden gems to explore. I particularly appreciate Eric's can-do attitude and his strong sense of teamwork, which is so important in a small organization such as ours, and his connections with contractors and folks out in the field is just really invaluable to us and to residents in getting stuff done. So in conclusion, the town of Ross recognizes Eric Robb for his 5 years of service and dedication to the residents of Ross for all that he does to ensure the safety, integrity, and compliance of buildings and structures with the building codes. So we are recognizing him, and I'd like to applaud him.
Thank you, Krista. Thank you, council.
You're welcome. Our Mayor Pro Tem Kircher has a certificate and a...
Certificate of appreciation.
Thank you.
Eric, thank you so much.
All right, before we move on to the next agenda item, I just wanted to note that I'm the Mayor Pro Tempore. I'm standing in for Mayor Breckus, who is ill, but is participating via Zoom. And at this point, I wonder if Mayor Breckus could make a statement as to why you are participating on Zoom.
Thank you. Unfortunately, I've got a cold, so I've decided to appear remotely today. And there's nobody in the room that's 18 or over.
Thank you. So the next item on the agenda is the mayor's report. And because Mayor Breckus is ill, she has asked me to read the mayor's report. This is Mayor Breckis's report that I will now read. As we approach the festive season, I am filled with gratitude and joy to extend warm holiday greetings to each and every member of our wonderful community. The spirit of the holidays is not only about celebration, but also about reflection, gratitude, and the warmth that comes from being part of a caring and vibrant community like ours. I am delighted to share with you some heartwarming stories about the incredible efforts and dedication of our town staff and volunteers who have gone above and beyond to make this holiday season special for all. First, community outreach and support. The collaboration between the school and the town, including Ross Recreation, has been to the benefit of the entire community. This manifests itself in the school using the Ross Town Commons for school use, the school keeping its facilities, including the Blacktop, open over the weekend for the community, the Town Recreation Department offering discounts to school employees, and the town's use of the school stage as needed. Another collaboration I heard at a recent Ross Leadership Cabinet meeting is Cedar's use of the Branson School to host their school prom. As many of you know, a significant amount of volunteer activity occurs by individuals associated with the school and community groups, from organizing food drives to distributing essential supplies and gift giving. Individual parents, students, and community groups' commitment to helping fellow students showcases the true spirit of unity and compassion. Second, festive decorations. Our town has transformed into a winter wonderland thanks to the hard work and creativity of our dedicated public works staff and the Ross Property Owners Association. The beautiful decorations lining our streets, parks, and public spaces are a testament to their artistic talents and commitments to creating a magical atmosphere for all to enjoy. Third, special events and activities. In collaboration with our enthusiastic volunteers, community groups, including Magic, Pixie Park, and the Ross Property Owners Association, have organized a series of special events and activities, including an ice skate rink, holiday lighting, and a bake sale to bring joy to residents of all ages. In doing so, they provide numerous opportunities for our community to come together and celebrate the season. Fourth, safety and well-being. Our police and fire department staff remain vigilant in ensuring the safety and well-being of our residents during the holidays. Whether it's monitoring our school, working towards safe bike and scooter use, enhancing security measures for public events, or providing timely updates on weather conditions, their dedication to your safety is unwavering. Fifth, thank you to volunteers. I also want to express my deepest gratitude to all the volunteers who have generously contributed their time, energy, and skills to make our town a better place. But in particular, I want to thank and highlight Joey Buckingham, Stephen Sutro, Mark Fritz, Laura Dewar, and Mark Krutschnitt for their time and dedication serving on the Advisory Design Review Group, also called the ADR. This group of individuals does much of the heavy lifting for the council as we review home renovations and projects to make this community a beautiful place to live and ensure architectural excellence in design. Your selfless efforts have not gone unnoticed, and your commitment to our community is truly commendable. As we celebrate this festive season, let us remember the importance of kindness, generosity, and community spirit. May the holidays bring you joy, warmth, and the company of loved ones. All right, moving on to item 7, council committee and liaison reports. Does any member of the council have a report? All right. Next, staff and community reports. The report of the town manager Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Kircher. Good evening, Mayor and council members. A couple of updates for you. I'll keep it short. Big thanks to RPOA and the Ross Auxiliary for planning a super fun Winterfest event at Magic the weekend before last. Also, big thanks to Magic to opening up to the community in such a magnificent way. I think our residents very much enjoyed the events that took place there. The police department is supporting the new pathway on Laurel Grove by proactively positioning a marked unit on Laurel Grove at Monte Alegre during peak pedestrian and bicycle times. This is being done to help motorists and kids get used to the new pathway and to calm traffic in this area. So thank you to Chief Pata and our officers for doing that. A special tax for public safety services and increase of an appropriations limit in the town of Ross will be on the March 5th, 2024 ballot for Ross residents to vote on. This public safety tax is not new. It's simply a renewal of the existing parcel tax. The county elections office assigned it as Measure E on the ballot. Town Hall will be closed starting December 25th through New Year's Day. However, building inspections can be scheduled for December 27th and 28th. We know that this is an important service to our residents, and we wanted to make sure they have a couple days to get those inspections done. I'd like to thank the town council, our town attorney, and all of our town staff and volunteers for a productive year. I wish you a very merry holiday season. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, report of the Ross Property Owners Association.
Good evening, Town Council. I feel a lot of the comments were already made during the report from the mayor and the head of our town manager. Magic did a phenomenal job with Winterfest. It truly was a community event that brought together all parts of this beautiful Ross Valley. And we're so thankful for Magic, Pixie Park, Ross Property Owners, the town for committing the funds to Ross Property Owners so we could afford to do the ice skating rink and all the lights in the snow. And it really was, we hope this will be the permanent home for all of this activity. Also want to thank the town for contributing to the winter lights that everybody's enjoying. It's beautiful. It's always magical this time of year, and we couldn't do it without the support of the town. Last report is that we're still working on the post office. So we are doing another table in there, and then we're working on a big lighting upgrade. So it's taking some time to just we're working with our ADR partners to make sure all of it's to code. So there'll be more in the upcoming year. But just echoing the same comments of our town manager and our mayor, it's been a wonderful year. It's a wonderful year of partnership between the town of Ross and RPOA, and of course our auxiliary. And we appreciate everything that you've done for us this year, and we look forward to working with you next year.
Thank you. Right, the next item on the agenda, item 9, is the consent agenda. And these are items A through F that are on the consent agenda, so they can all be considered together. However, before we take any action, let me ask, does any member of the council wish to have any of these items removed for separate consideration? Does any member of the public request that any item be removed for separate consideration? This again is item 9, A through F, any of these subparagraphs. Anyone on Zoom?
No raised hands on Zoom.
All right, well, good. Then I think we're ready for a motion.
I'll move to approve the consent agenda.
Second. Councilmember McMillan? Aye. Councilmember Robbins?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Kircher?
Aye.
Councilmember Cole?
Aye.
Mayor Breckus?
Aye.
With a vote of 5, the motion passes.
All right, moving on to the next item, item 10, public hearings on planning projects. This is part 1 of the planning projects. Item A, 45 Poplar Avenue, design review, a nonconformity permit, demolition permit, and a variance, and town council consideration of resolution number 2342. So, staff, Alex.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. Tonight, the applicant at 45 Poplar is requesting approval for design review, a nonconformity permit, a demolition permit, and a variance. The project involves the demolition of an existing single-family residence. The applicant is proposing a new 2-story single-family residence in the same location as the existing home, maintaining the existing nonconforming front and side yard setback. The proposed residence consists of an 807 square foot second floor and a 1,005 square foot first floor. The roof height will be raised from its existing height of 26 feet 1 inch to 30 feet. Additionally, a new accessory structure will be constructed within the rear yard setback. The proposed exterior building materials are wood shingles and a stone ledge siding. A new wooden deck is also proposed in the rear yard, and new pavers will be installed for a walkway in the front entrance area. A variance is required for the new accessory structure to be built in the rear yard, and a nonconformity permit is required to reconstruct the existing nonconforming structure with regard to the north and south side yard setbacks. And a separate application has been submitted for ministerial review for a 635 square foot ADU in the front portion of the residence. And staff has received emails in support of the project from neighbors at 65 Poplar, 41 Poplar, 49 Poplar, 53 Poplar, and the 2 adjacent neighbors at 43 Poplar and 47 Poplar Avenue. Thank you.
Are there?
I believe I do have, yeah, the design team that would like to say some words.
Let me just ask, do any council members have questions for staff before we hear from the applicant?
I have one brief question. Alex, could you just touch on the mitigation of all the increased impervious surfaces, the drainage?
I actually do not have that information, but I believe the applicant can answer that.
All right, well, then if there are no further questions from the council, we can now hear from the applicant. Now, the applicant has 15 minutes. You can use as much of that time as you wish, and or reserve some of the time for rebuttal.
Thank you. Steve Geisler, Geisler Architects. I won't take all that time. Just very briefly, we have some semi-pervious, we have some decking and some walkways going in. There's a parking area that is impervious, so it's the bare minimum to allow the house to function, connect with the street, all of that. Alex pointed out the permits that we're requesting. I just want to touch on a couple things. When we were doing the design, we really paid attention to, you guys have a great design packet that guides people through as to the character of what you want in Ross, and so we really paid attention to that. Alex also mentioned we have support of all the neighbors around us, so we've worked with the neighbors and come up with a design that creates privacy or keeps privacy for them while allowing this house to expand and use the narrow lot that it's on. We've pushed the house further back from the street, so we have a little bit more front yard. It's not so right on the street. We also have that sort of Ross character, the shingles and the steeper roofs, all fitting in under the height limit, even though we have a floodplain. So we've been pushed up by the floodplain, but don't get any extra height. So it's been a bit of a challenge for that, but that's okay. I'll just in close say that it's been looked at by your ADR and we received unanimous approval from your ADR. So happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Does any member of the council have questions at this point? All right, thank you. So we'll open it up for public comment. Does anyone wish to be heard on this item? Anyone on Zoom?
There are no raised hands on Zoom.
All right. Well, unless the applicant has anything to add, we'll bring it back to the council for discussion. Anyone have any comments?
No.
I'll make a motion to approve resolution number 2342.
Second.
Councilmember McMillan,
Aye.
Councilmember Robbins,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Kircher,
Aye.
Councilmember Cool,
Aye.
Mayor Breckus.
Aye.
With a vote of 5, the motion passes.
All right, so we'll move on now to item number 11 on the agenda. Town Council to receive presentation regarding the evaluation of the Town of Ross Emergency Management Program conducted by Jeffries Public Safety Consulting. And I believe we'll hear from Chief Pata first.
Excuse me, Mayor Pro Tem Kircher, I'd just like to introduce this topic just very
Oh,
briefly.
please, yes, Town Manager
A
Johnson.
little different this time. First, so tonight we have Police Chief Pata, and we have our consultant Dave Jeffries here, who is an expert in this area. We also have Chief Dan Mahoney here in the event that you or members of the public have questions that involve fire services. I just wanted to take a moment to recognize Chief Pata's leadership on this issue. You know, it's not easy to do a an evaluation of how you're doing or and identify areas that need improvement, and not just for the police department, but our whole organization. It's not easy to do that, and then to be able to come and give a presentation about it too. I think that takes real leadership. So I just want to acknowledge that and thank Chief Pata for his leadership on this topic. And I'm going to hand it over. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, Council, and Town Manager Johnson. So when I first got here in 2021, one of the first things I did was to create short, medium, and long-term goals for assessing our emergency preparedness here in town. The first thing I did was to really learn the history of the types of events that happen in town and what historically has been our responses to those things. My next goal was my medium-term goal, which was really to collaborate and build relationships with our friends and partners at Ross Valley Fire, the Offices of Emergency Management, the Property Owners Association, our schools, and importantly, the Age-Friendly Task Force, as well as RossNet. And this was done so that we could create some momentum and some traction on getting information out to our community on how to better prepare themselves and in the event of something terrible that could happen. It was a good experience for us. The collaboration was outstanding. In that time leading to the long-term goal, which was to connect with Mr. Jeffries, we did some things. We held an evacuation drill. We partnered with Age Friendly and Marin Center for Independent Living and hosted some workshops for access functional needs, people who can't necessarily get out of their homes. We did some online stuff so that people who couldn't be there could still watch and participate. We recently participated with Fire Safe Marin at Cedars. We sent a lot of literature home over the last few years through the schools, knowing that the schools was a great conduit to get people and our message out. And really what we wanted to do was be present and be available to answer questions and get people signed up to Alert Marin. And we did that by going to Live on the Common events and the Rosstown dinners and other events. Finally, in that, but certainly not the last thing that we've done, but an important thing that we did was to test our sirens, make sure that the sirens are working both with power and without power. You may be hearing them on Saturdays now at noon, and that was done on purpose so that people are home and could hear it. The long-term goal was to evaluate our past and current capacity and look at the plan that was in place before I arrived. The document we have now is 2 years old, but recent national events have tested all of emergency plans across the nation. So the town manager and I wanted an expert to take a look at what we actually have now and to find a path forward to see if there are other best practices for us to incorporate. My vision moving forward is that we create an emergency plan that is, in my opinion, considered a living document, something that isn't just on the shelf, but something that will change as time changes and as events change. So in doing so, while I have experience in this, I'm not the expert, but I found the expert. I've known Mr. Jeffries for about 40 years. We've been doing this together for a long time. He is absolutely the expert in this. He's a local expert. He's from Marin, so he's not coming to us with experience and information coming from some other place in the world. He has a master's degree in emergency and disaster management. He's been in law enforcement for 30 years. He's transitioned to working with the North Bay Incident Management Team and has actually been deployed 30 times to these different kinds of events. So he is the right guy to have for this. So I would like to hand over kind of this segment to him so he can bring you up to speed on kind of where we are now and where we're going to go.
And thanks for aging both of us, Ralph. Again, as Ralph said, my name is Dave Jeffries. It's kind of nice to come back here. My grandparents had a place up on Upper Ames, and my mom grew up in San Anselmo, so I used to be down here a lot in my youth. Worked for Novato PD for over 31 years, retired as a captain with their police department about 10 years ago, and been working mostly in emergency management ever since. So in addition to the degree Ralph mentioned, I'm a certified emergency manager through the International Association of Emergency Managers, California Emergency Services Association certification as a professional emergency manager, and as Ralph alluded to, an incident commander, credentialed incident commander with the North Bay Incident Management Team through Marin County Fire as an on-call position, and Chief Mahoney's part of that team as well. We've deployed together to do a few things. Right now I'm working with 9 jurisdictions, some in LA, most of them up here in the Bay Area. The largest of which right now is Novato. So this smaller jurisdictions is where I spend a lot of my time. So first off, I'd like to commend your staff for even asking to have this done. Normally what we see happen is agencies start to look at their emergency management program the day after they've had a really bad day. And that's a really hard time to look at that. So again, kudos for that. You have the report. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that. I wanted to focus on what I've recommended going forward. And I try to be very practical and realistic, understanding Marin County pretty well in the jurisdictions here. So initially wanted to look at, as Ralph mentioned, your EOP has been around for a couple of years. There's some things in there I can see updating. One thing I deal with, almost every jurisdiction I deal with, looking at their emergency operations plan is their emergency operations center organization, and making sure it's right sized for the size of your city staff and what you could reasonably deploy, not only during one shift a day, which might be a winter storm, but if you had to work 2 shifts a day. As you know, you have a limited number of staff here to do that kind of work. So to work on the emergency operations plan to make sure it's really right sized for you. Also to work on your emergency operations center's location. This is one of them. And to make sure that you've got the job aids and the practical tools and those kind of things to help your staff work through this, as well as really looking at what technologies you want to bring in. The county does provide WebEOC. It's an online software program that connects agencies. I've done a lot of teaching on that software. There are some challenges with that, and they're bringing in a new piece to help with damage assessment. So assessing how we want to look at that and work through that. The third item I wanted to really suggest you look at initially is also your disaster ordinance. With one small change that looks like it had to do with the incorporation of the fire departments here, it really looks like it's been untouched since 1971. And so there are some areas in there that I would suggest looking at, especially when it comes with procurement policies and spending authorities and things like that. These are places where agencies can get into trouble. And just anecdotally, I was assigned to the Paradise Fire as part of the Paradise EOC up there. And when I first got there, I asked their director, "What's your spending authority?" He goes, "Oh, don't worry about it. The city council waived all procurement requirements." Had a little pain in my chest because that's the kind of thing that makes sense in the moment, but will cause you nothing but trouble when FEMA comes in and tries to decide what they will and will not reimburse. So looking at those kinds of things to make sure you're coming through an incident ready to move on. So that was really the initial things to kind of work on that foundational thing. Next is to start looking at some training, and there is a lot of online training that's easy because it's free, it's convenient, you don't have to schedule it, you can do it when you want to, and have some recommendations there. But it comes from both FEMA and California Office of Emergency Services. Next would be to look at some key staff going off for some training. There is a lot of training available in the Bay Area through the Urban Area Security Initiative. Also, the Northern California Regional Information Center puts training on from time to time. The nice thing about these, the courses tend to be free. It's just getting your folks to the class. Then next is to take your Emergency Operations Center staff and do some basic training with them in your scenario and how you're set up to work so they get that hands-on piece. And lastly, start with exercises. A tabletop exercise is a simple discussion-based exercise, tends to be low stress, walk through, look for gaps in our understandings. Done a lot of these and they're always very informational. And once we got through some of that, then look at some higher end stuff. You'll notice in the report, it talks about continuity of operations plan. I'm working on 2 of these right now in Southern California. The idea here is to look at your City Hall and your records management and your documentation management and your staffing and say, what if we couldn't go back into City Hall? What if cyber or whatever else, we lose access to certain things? And walk through, and also succession planning, not only for the elected officials, but your town staff. So that you don't run into a scenario where nobody's quite sure who's in charge, because we never talked about this before. And at the same time, look at higher end exercises like a functional exercise where your staff would be sitting in the EOC in their roles, working through a simulated disaster with messaging coming in and having to work through that during the day. So that's really the basis that I looked at this at. I don't see you hiring a staff of 12 emergency managers to work here full time. So try to keep it really basic, a place where we can make a lot of improvement relatively simply and inexpensively. And again, so commend you for looking at this before that really bad day and then rather than after that bad day. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Does your training contemplate also training council members?
That is some of the training I've done in the past. I think it's very important that elected officials be trained on what your jurisdiction is going to be doing, but also the role of the elected as a policy body and not being the incident commander. It's a very different training regimen, and we've seen examples around sometimes where there's confusion on that, and it can cause confusion to the staff when an elected official shows up as well. So that's a key piece, but also to understand where you can really help your staff, and by delivering the talking points coming from staff as to what we need the public to do, because sometimes you can get a little more public attention than the staff can. So there's a supportive role in places to be careful.
Anyone else have a question? I have a question, which is you recommended we revisit our ordinance and update it. Is there such a thing as a model ordinance or something we could look to for an idea of where we might go from here?
The one I would refer you to is actually Novato's. I got that from looking at the city of San Ramon's. The gentleman that wrote that is now San Jose's emergency manager. And I also had that reviewed with disaster recovery experts at the time that were friends of mine to go through and parse that. It's been reviewed by a local city attorney before we put it into place. But it addresses a wide number of things: city council succession, city or town manager succession, again, procurement processes, spending authorities, price gouging during a disaster, how the proclamations work. There's a number of things in there that after, where are we getting at, 52 years, maybe it's time for a refresh.
Possibly, yes. Thank you. Is there anything further in terms of the staff presentation? All right, well, then I will open it up for any public comment on this issue. No one here? Anyone on Zoom?
There are no raised hands on Zoom.
Good, okay, well, bring it back to the council for any further discussion, or is there, oh, pardon me, no? Bring it back to the council for any further discussion on this issue?
Oh, thank you very much. That was very helpful.
Yeah, are we going to go forward with all these recommendations? What's the next step?
Thank you very much. Yeah, well, we focused with Mr. Jeffries on, things that we could do right away and move to we asked for a prioritized list and he gave that to us. So our plan is to move forward with as quickly as we can. We have some funding this year already in the budget. And if anything needs additional funding, then we would bring that forward as part of the budget process. And I'll ask Chief Pata if he'd like to add anything to that.
No, not really. The police officers have their line level training, so it really is going to be for the town manager and I to, bring our other members of staff up to speed on it. And as far as that model ordinance, I know a guy, so I'm probably going to get it so we can make it work for us.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
I'll be working with the department management team to figure out what would be the, getting people to go, not instead of just encouraging it, pretty much requiring it and making it possible for them to devote time to it. Okay.
All right, well, if there's nothing further, thank you very much. Great presentation, thank you. All right, so moving along to the next item, item 12, Town Council consideration and public hearing regarding adoption of resolution number 2346, authorizing maximum rates imposed and collected by Marin Sanitary Service, and determining that the town's franchise fees are justified and by the town's costs providing solid waste services. So we will go to Town Manager Johnson.
Great. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Kircher. The actions before you this evening are to conduct a public hearing and adopt a resolution establishing maximum rates collected by Marin Sanitary Service for refuse and recyclable material collection and disposal services, and those would be effective this coming January 1st, 2024. The resolution you are asked to adopt this evening also determines that the town's franchise fees are justified by the town's costs of providing solid waste services and reasonable charges for the use of town property for solid waste services. Just a little background, trash recycling and organics collection and disposal are provided pursuant to a franchise agreement that the town has with Marin Sanitary Service. That agreement outlines the services that are provided, as well as a methodology to be followed to set customer rates each year. The jurisdictions in Marin that have similar agreements with Marin Sanitary work together informally as the Marin Franchisers Group to share information and to reduce costs. The group meets several times a year to oversee Marin Sanitary's operations and to work together to conduct a single annual rate review analysis rather than each jurisdiction having to conduct and pay for a separate review. Marin Sanitary Service submitted their 2024 rate application using the agreed upon methodology that is in the franchise agreement, and that assisted in stabilizing rate changes year to year. The franchisers group hired R3 Consulting Group to review Marin Sanitary's rate request. R3 found that Marin Sanitary's rate request of 6.39% increase for Ross rates to be appropriate under the methodology. That 6.39% rate adjustment will result in an increase of $2.95 per month for a residential 32-gallon cart, with the monthly cost would now total $49.11 starting January 1st. Recycling is included in all of the accounts, and customers can reduce their regular landfill container size, which would result in lower rates. R3 conducted a survey of Marin County refuse haulers as part of the rate review, and using this comparison, the Ross proposed rate is lower than the Marin County average. As in previous years, it is recommended that the rate adjustment be applied across the board to all residential, multifamily, and commercial service accounts. Actual rates for services are provided as an attachment to resolution number 2346, which is before you tonight for adoption. This year, the town attorney's office conducted an analysis of the town's franchise fee. The study was conducted by R3 Consulting Group, and it is attached to the staff report for this item that's in the agenda packet tonight. The study demonstrated that the town's costs of providing solid waste related services, together with a reasonable charge that the town could impose for the use of town property for solid waste services, exceed the town's franchise fee that we collect. This year's rate adjustment resolution includes a finding that the town's franchise fees are justified based on this recently completed analysis. Garth Schultz, our consultant with R3 Consulting, is participating in tonight's meeting via Zoom in case the town council has any technical questions about the annual rate review or about the cost of service study. And Patty Garbarino, representing Marin Sanitary, is also participating via Zoom tonight. She would much prefer to be here in person. However, she is recovering from a recent illness, and it's best that she participate from home. And that is the end of my presentation. Thank you.
Does any member of the council have any questions for Manager Johnson or the individuals present on Zoom? Is there any public comment on this item? I should clarify. Does anyone present in the room wish to be heard on this matter? And is there anyone on Zoom who has raised a hand?
There's no raised hands.
All right, then I'll bring it back to the council for discussion and action.
I move we approve resolution number 2346.
Is there two parts to this? Do we also need to do the study part?
No, the resolution includes the study.
Okay, awesome. I'll second that.
Councilmember McMillan?
Aye.
Councilmember Robbins?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Kircher?
Aye.
Councilmember Cool?
Aye.
Mayor Breckus?
Aye.
With a vote of 5, the motion passes.
All right, next we'll take up item number 13, which consists of two parts. So we'll consider those, we'll vote on those separately as separate action items. The first is adoption of resolution 2351, amending the Town of Ross May 31, 2023 sixth cycle housing element. And I'll turn this over to Town Manager Johnson and to our
Mayor Pro Tem Kircher and council members, as we're bringing up the presentation, let me give a little bit of background. My name is David Woltering. I'm the staff support person on this project. And the town's been working since March of 2022 on updating its housing element in compliance with state law. And you adopted an element in May 31st of this year. And then that adopted housing element, after much work by this community, was forwarded on in June to the state, HCD, Housing and Community Development, for review and comments. HCD staff members provided comments back to the community and indicated that there would be a need for further revisions to the adopted housing element. Our staff and housing element consultant, Andrew Hill from Diet and Bhatia, have had a number of meetings with HCD representatives, Zoom, telephone conversations, and kind of worked through what sort of revisions HCD was looking for. And we've revised the housing element to address those concerns. Andrew Hill is here tonight from Diet and Bhatia and has prepared a presentation to kind of go back a little bit in time to talk about how we got to where we are today, some of the key milestones, and then go through the revisions that are being proposed to meet state requirements and to bring the town forward to hopefully receiving certification of its housing element. So with that, if I could turn this over to Andrew, and he'll take us through his presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, David, and good evening. So as David said, the following adoption of the housing element by the town council in May, the element was sent back to the California Department of Housing and Community Development for review and certification. On August 15th, HCD sent the town a letter indicating that some additional modifications to the element would be needed. And as David said, through the fall, we worked closely with HCD staff to develop and vet revisions that address those comments. A full red line draft showing changes that were made to the housing element subsequent to adoption was released for public comment on October 30th. And then that document was resubmitted to HCD on November 14th. And we expect to receive findings of conditional compliance from HCD within the next few weeks. And so the purpose of the hearing tonight is to provide an overview of the edits made in response to those comments from HCD, for the council to adopt those amendments to the housing element if appropriate, and then also to introduce an ordinance amending the zoning code to facilitate workforce housing on the Branson School campus as envisioned in the housing element. So overall, I would say that the revisions made in response to HCD comments really involve clarifications and the incorporation of additional information to further substantiate the analysis on which the housing element is based. There are really 5 key areas of revision that are shown on this slide, and I'll walk through each one of them for you individually now. So the first item that HCD requested clarification on has to do with the SB9 candidate sites. The housing element identifies 32 candidate sites for SB9 housing, and the town has already adopted an ordinance that gives property owners the option to split their lots and add housing if they wish to do so. HCD requested additional details confirming that the existing structures on those 32 lots and access issues would not impede development of the sites, and so that's been incorporated into the housing element. I had my urban design team use a computer-assisted software to demonstrate the potential for lot splits and access, and we've included that detail in an appendix to the housing element. And for example, what you can see here is we included aerials of selected sites showing that each of those sites can have 2 points of access and showing where the lot could be divided, lot could be split. So the next topic had to do, HCD also asked for additional details to demonstrate the viability of redevelopment at 27 Ross Common. And in response, we've included a letter of interest from the property owner in an appendix to the element. And additionally, we obtained a title report for the site demonstrating that there are no easements, deed restrictions, or other factors that would unduly constrain development on the site. We've discussed this information with HCD and they're satisfied. They've told us that they're satisfied that addresses their comment. The next topic has to do with quantified objectives. The housing element includes this table of quantified objectives through the year 2031. These objectives are really targets that the town will strive to achieve based on local needs, available resources, and in consideration of constraints. The adopted element includes targets for construction, but not targets for rehabilitation or preservation. And HCD asked that we consider adding non-binding targets for those categories as well. So overall, the quality of the housing stock in Ross is in very good condition. So there wasn't clear need for rehabilitation, but in discussion with HCD, they suggested that we look at the number of major remodels in town annually. That's about 14. And so we've assumed that there would be 14 for each of the 8 years and use that as our rehabilitation objective. In terms of the preservation target, we assumed a total of 20 unpermitted ADUs would be legalized under program 3D in the element because there's incentives for that. And so we're using 20 as our target for conservation and preservation. In the adopted element, or for the adopted element, we had done outreach to future residents of workforce housing. We'd had a focus group discussion with teachers, post office employees, and other people employed downtown, and that information had been incorporated into the element. HCD requested that we do some additional outreach, however, to affordable housing developers, service providers, and advocates. And so we conducted a series of interviews over Zoom with the organizations seen here: Mid-Penn Housing, the Marin Center for Independent Living, the Cedars of Marin, and Fair Housing Advocates of Northern California. And summaries of those conversations have been incorporated into an appendix, Appendix G. Overall, I would say that the representatives were all supportive of the content of the housing element. And then the final amendment made in response to HCD comments has to do with workforce housing at Branson. Program 3J in the element involves facilitating construction of 10 units on the campus to help meet the town's lower income RHNA obligations. Now, 4 of those 6 parcels that you can see on the screen here, let me just move that out of the way. 4 of the 6 parcels that you can see on the screen were actually included in prior inventories, but did not develop with housing. And so under state law, the zoning needs to be amended to permit housing by right on those parcels if the owner commits to making 20% of the units affordable to lower income households. And so program 3J in the element has been updated to reflect that requirement. And in parallel, we've gone ahead and prepared zoning amendments to facilitate the development of those 10 units at Branson as envisioned in the housing element. So let me walk you through how those zoning amendments would work. The proposed amendments are intended to facilitate the construction of 10 new units for faculty and staff as envisioned in the housing element. The amendments are specifically constructed in a way that would permit a maximum of 20 units across all 6 of those parcels, but not more than 20. The current zoning for the parcels allows 1 dwelling unit per acre, and that would not change. However, the amendments allow, under certain circumstances, they provide flexibility that would allow Branson to add the 10 units in exchange for a commitment to affordability. And so the amendments do this in 2 ways. First, the amendments say that when multiple contiguous parcels in the B Special Building District are under the common ownership of an educational institution, and that educational institution has prepared a master plan that calls for faculty and staff housing, then in that circumstance, the permitted density can be calculated over the total area of those contiguous parcels. And so the 6 parcels at Branson have a total contiguous area of 16.6 acres, which means that would allow for a maximum of 16 units across all 6 parcels. There are 9 existing units on the 6 parcels today, and so this amendment alone would not allow Branson to add 10 units. Therefore, there's a second thing that the amendments do, and that is to allow for a bonus of 25% of the maximum number of units allowed on the total property to be granted in exchange for a deed restriction of those additional units so that they would be made affordable to lower income households. This effectively grants a bonus of 4 additional units in exchange for that a long-term affordability commitment that helps the town meet its obligations for lower income RHNA. Now, the proposed amendments really limit this flexibility to a very specific circumstance that exists only at the Branson School, and the maximum number of units across all 6 parcels is 20, including the 9 existing units. Additionally, the amendments establish some objective standards to guide the development of faculty and staff housing. Those standards address these topics. For example, height. The standards say that the new buildings can't be taller than any existing buildings on the campus. They say that setbacks should be very close to the setbacks on adjacent properties, so not less than 90% of what's on existing properties, so within not less than 10% smaller, if you will. They provide requirements for screening the new buildings with vegetation. They provide they require control of architectural massing with the use of at least 3 forms of articulation, so changing the roof shape, modulating the walls, so to break up the mass and make the buildings look less massive. They provide standards for materials and color, for landscaping that comply with the Ross Valley Fire Department standards and state water efficient landscaping standards. And then also that no parking is required, consistent with state law, but if Branson requests parking, a use permit would be needed. One clarification that we're recommending to the ordinance is that some language be added here. HCD had requested that we include a reference to permitted net density to make it clear that small multifamily structures would be allowed if the school wanted to build them on the 4 parcels that are being reused from prior inventories. The key here is the term net density. And an edit is proposed to clarify that net density would be calculated not over the total area of a parcel, but rather only on the portion of the parcel that's reserved for housing. So this doesn't change the total maximum of 20 units that could be built across all 6 parcels. That remains 20 if all the special circumstances are met. And then in terms of environmental review, as you all know, the town council certified a housing element EIR on May 31st, and the California Environmental Quality Act says that an addendum to a previously certified EIR can be prepared if there's some changes or additions necessary, but those changes would not result in new or substantially more adverse impacts than previously analyzed. Those conditions are met in this case, and we've included an addendum in your packet that demonstrates that. Very quickly, if I walk through this, the findings of the addendum, the new information provided related to SB 9 and 27 Ross Common really constitutes minor technical changes and additions. The zoning amendments themselves really facilitate construction of the 10 new workforce housing units that were anticipated in the element. And they wouldn't result in more or different locations, so there's no new or substantially more adverse impacts there. Programs 1F and 3O involve outreach and would not permit any new development or otherwise result in physical impacts. 2H would permit the clustering of residents on large sites already identified in the element without increasing the density permitted. And 2I, while 2I could theoretically increase the capacity for housing on church sites, the future potential housing development would be within the cumulative projections for build out of the housing element. So for all of these reasons, the changes, the amendments proposed to the housing element would not result in any new or substantially more adverse impacts, and an addendum is an appropriate level of CEQA for the document. So that was a lot of information, but what we're recommending in terms of an action tonight, if appropriate, is for the town council to adopt the resolution amending the housing element and to waive first reading and introduce an ordinance amending the zoning code to permit the construction of staff and faculty housing at Branson as envisioned in the element.
And council members, if I could add to that, we did have a discussion this afternoon with Branson representatives, and they did provide a letter late this afternoon, very late this afternoon, to council members indicating concerns specifically, we believe, having to do with the proposed ordinance and really not necessarily with the revisions to the housing element. In this letter that you received, I believe, they indicate concerns that the existing CUP that governs the use of construction and activities on the Branson school site would impede them moving forward with a housing project specifically. They have other concerns in their letter about subjective development and design standards. The CUP does indicate under condition 2 that a building permit would be required to move forward with, say, a housing project, and specifically condition 2 of the existing use permit precludes that. So we do acknowledge that there is a need to amend the CUP, the existing CUP. That's acknowledged. And we actually talked to Branson representatives this afternoon about a possible phased approach to amending the CUP. We understand that they're working on, as we I think all know, a more comprehensive campus master plan that would trigger, based on the existing CUP for Branson, an amendment. And they may take another year or two or what have you to finish that master plan. That's not imminent. It's in the early stage, and these projects take a long time. But as we discussed with representatives of Branson this afternoon, late this afternoon, there could be an opportunity for a more focused amendment on the housing component to allow that to go forward. We feel that based on that discussion, that there is the opportunity to find a path forward in terms of addressing their concerns. And they do have some legitimate concerns, we believe. And perhaps, and this is something the council would need to weigh in on, there could be some sort of phased approach to a CUP amendment focusing on housing. And then once they get their comprehensive master plan completed, that would trigger a CUP amendment as well. So at this point, we don't believe that the revisions to the housing element, your first item of action, the resolution regarding the housing element, would be affected by the issues raised in their letter. We do believe that in terms of the issues raised in their letter, that the second item, the ordinance, could be, I say could be affected. And that we would hope, actually, based on further discussions with Branson representatives, we could find a path forward, a process and path forward to address their concerns. And like I said, there are concerns there, but we would hope to be able to work with them further. The town attorney may have some further thoughts on this in terms of moving forward with an action this evening. Planning staff and consultant have talked about this in terms of the revisions to the element. We don't see that these concerns really affect that, and that there could be an action taken this evening on item 1, the resolution, and we would recommend that you go forward on that. I would defer to the town attorney on the second aspect, the ordinance, and taking an action on that in terms of introduction and first reading. So that concludes our report.
Well, I'll just address that comment. I think at this point, given the communications we're having with Branson, I think it makes sense to move forward with both items. And I think there is a way to resolve some of their concerns before we do the adoption in January. you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Well, Councilmember McMillan has a question.
Do you think you can resolve their issues by the January council meeting? Because that's given the holidays and everything.
I hope so. I mean, we will try. We just learned about these issues, late yesterday afternoon, after months of discussing with them, and we're happy to continue those conversations that we started yesterday afternoon. I think from my perspective and from staff's perspective, the housing element, which we've been working with Branson on for months, should go forward. And I assume that's what, there's an interest in both parties in having that go forward. And I think their concerns can be either addressed in a possible amendment to the zoning ordinances before each night. And if that's the case, we'll provide that amended language in January, or maybe another mechanism, as Mr. Wolterine suggested, maybe a limited CUP amendment. I think what's important to recognize tonight is what's before the council is not somehow usurping the CUP. The CUP they have allows them to operate with a certain amount of limitations. And I think their concern they expressed to staff today is they're worried that a housing project they bring forward in the future, which we don't know what that looks like today, might conflict with their CUP, with the traffic. If that's the case, we'll have to analyze that in the future, that housing project, and determine if the CUP provisions do in fact conflict with that proposal. And moreover, if that housing proposal is one by right under the Housing Accountability Act, we'll have to make determinations of whether we can impose certain conditions in the CUP on that proposal years out. So I don't know if we need to do anything more of amending our zoning ordinance now, because to me, a lot of that has to do with a future proposal and what that looks like and whether they're entitled under that future proposal for a housing project under the streamlined process.
So what you're saying is this is kind of a hypothetical?
I think their concerns are real, but it's hard to address them with a hypothetical housing development project.
I have one more question for Andrew. I'm just wondering if the proposed ordinance, if someone else besides Branson owns the property, does the ordinance only apply to Branson, or is it an educational institution, or could it be some third party? I mean, how tightly is that drafted?
Yeah, it only applies if an educational institution owns multiple contiguous parcels in the B special building district. And right now, it's only Branson in the town of Ross that if another entity, like a private developer, were to come in and buy the Branson property, they would not be entitled to that flexibility because they're not an educational institution. Right? It's limited to an educational institution. On the other hand, if another institutional education were to come in the future and buy up other properties, and they wanted to propose staff and faculty housing, then they would be entitled to the same. However, as I mentioned, we're not changing the base zoning. We're only allowing the base to be calculated over the contiguous area. So it's a little bit of flexibility, not a outright rezoning.
Have you seen this process done elsewhere by educational institutions?
I have not seen it done by another educational institution, but my firm has done zoning across the U.S. and we've applied this strategy in other places to allow for flexibility.
And it passes muster with courts and so forth?
Yes.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Councilmember McMillan.
I just wanted to ask our town attorney if he concurs with the opinion that Mr. Hill just gave in terms of the ordinance being limited to an educational institution.
Yes, I do.
Any further questions? All right, good. Well, I'll open this up then to public comment. Does anybody wish to be heard? Yes, please. Please come forward.
Good evening. My name is excuse me. My name is David Hanson. I'm the Chief Financial and Operating Officer at the Branson School. I'm also a Ross resident. I live very close to campus. We have raised several serious concerns about the housing element and the ordinance. You've heard it both from your attorney and your planner that our concerns are legitimate. We believe that the issues related to our CUP need to be resolved before you vote on the ordinance and the housing element. We don't believe we can build housing currently with our CUP restrictions in place. And we've raised them in a letter today, but we also raised them several weeks ago in a phone call. The housing element has to show that the feasibility of housing is real. With our CUP amendment, or with our CUP currently as it stands, there's no realistic feasibility to have housing in Branson.
All right, thank you. Anything further? Thank you. Is there any, does anyone else who is present this evening in the room have any comments? Anyone on Zoom?
Riley H.
Evening, members of the council. My name is Riley Hurd. I represent the Branson School. I want to piggyback off some of the comments that David Hanson just made. I have been participating in nearly every city's housing element update process throughout Marin County. And the key component for housing sites in this cycle is found in Government Code 65583A3. And what it says is that the crucial test is that the site has a realistic and demonstrated potential for housing development. HCD is very focused this go-round on being sure that the ability to build the housing is there. So the reason we've expressed some concern is the school's CUP in condition 2 says no building permits may be issued for construction of anything at Branson unless it was in the 1978 master plan. Obviously, 10 units or 20 units, as was stated this evening, is not contained in that master plan. Furthermore, the traffic limits in the CUP, the restrictions on different street access, as well as other items, would prohibit the housing from being built unless the housing was excluded from the operational characteristics of the CUP, which makes sense, right? The CUP was designed to govern the school, not 10 or 20 units of housing if and when it were to be built there. So it seems like the simple fix is simply to add to the ordinance that the regulations of the CUP wouldn't apply to the housing that's being called for in the housing element. So that's pretty much all that we need to happen here. The ordinance does contain some standards that do not fit the definition of objective, but that I think is pretty easy to fix. And then the only other issue is that the requirement of a CUP to have any parking spaces for the new units is not the type of by right development that the state requires for reuse sites such as the school. So you can't require a discretionary secondary permit to have a parking space for one of the units were they to develop. And I think everybody in the surrounding area, as well as the town, should support that any new units have adequate parking. Otherwise, you get spillover issues and all of that. So I think this is very solvable. I think Branson is a great site for housing, and I think the school is eager to be a partner in meeting the RHNA. It's just that without these things addressed, it doesn't meet the criteria, and in fact, it's prohibited. So with those small changes, I think this could move forward this evening, but without them, it won't work. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there any further public comment online or in the room? All right, well, thank you. Then we will bring it back to council for further discussion and for action.
So Ben and Andrew, you both are of the opinion that we can work on these CUP amendments. I mean, it's certainly logical. You need parking, we need, permission to build. After this goes, I mean, this can go through tonight and we can still work on the CUP amendments and meet everyone's needs. Is that correct?
If I could, I think we should have the town attorney respond to that question, please.
Okay.
Yes, I think the one thing I do agree with what Mr. Hurd just said is at most a couple clarifying statements in an ordinance, which is the zoning ordinance, not the housing element. Housing element's not an ordinance. So the ordinance, if we need to clarify how it interacts with the CUP, we can make those clarifications. But one thing to be super clear about, the town is not taking the position that the CUP restrictions would somehow trump the by right housing that would occur if they came in with a project that has 20% affordable housing. And that's what the housing law is meant to address by right, whereas you can't have any discretion to approve. So when Mr. Hurd mentioned the concept of having to amend the CUP to get a building permit because it wasn't in the plan, that he's absolutely right. If Branson comes in with a by right 20% affordable housing project, we can't impose that condition of approval. So whether we decide to amend the conditions of approval to reference that, or whether it's just assert by state law, which we've also taken the position on other conditions in the past with Branson, we can't impose from the older CUP, that's a discussion we're gonna have with Branson on how to give them certainty to move forward. So there are issues that we need to address with them, but I think they're solvable because they are relatively minor in the larger scheme of them wanting to move forward with affordable housing that the city can rely on for its RENA.
So then, are you're comfortable going ahead with approving resolution 2351? Does the ordinance need rewriting before we can approve it, or would we do the first reading tonight and then amend it at when we've had time to do the wording?
Our office doesn't think it needs to be reworded, but if we have further conversations with Mr. Hurd and we come to some resolution where some clarifying language is needed, we could redo that in January.
Okay.
But our recommendation is to adopt the housing element, the resolution, and do the first reading of the ordinance.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? I have a question for town council. Is it correct then that adopting the housing element revisions does not prejudice Branson? It does not preclude resolution of the issues the legitimate issues that they have raised. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And so that is why you say you think this can all be addressed
Correct.
When we get to the ordinance. And are there also I know we are all aware of some time constraints here to get the final certification of our housing element. Is that another consideration that we need to keep this moving?
Yes, we would like to have the zoning adopted by the end of January.
Okay. Anyone else?
I just have a question. I'm concerned about their comments on the record about how this, the ordinance is not going to work in terms of the housing element. Is that something you're concerned with in terms of submitting the housing element, given what's been said?
I think we can reach a resolution with Branson on the issues that they've raised, and I'm not as concerned. I understand why they are making the record they need to make, but I also don't think the issues they're raising are insolvable.
Okay.
If I may, through Mayor Pro Tem, as you would move toward a motion, if you could recall that we did suggest clarification language, and I think Andrew Hill can put that back up. So as perhaps there's a motion that you would include this amended language, please. Thank you.
So
Wait, I thought the Ben was saying we can go ahead and make changes later. You're talking about making changes right now?
There's two types of changes. This change was in reaction to a public comment we received today to clarify that the 20 unit is not for the entire site.
I see.
That was the clustering concept we talked about, that Andrew talked about in his presentation. So to not confuse matters, the resolution that you need to, is for your consideration for adoption, needs no amendments. And what Mr. Woltering is suggesting, so after you get through that item, on the second item, we request that you make that requested amendment on the screen in red line when you introduce the ordinance as amended by staff tonight, and then read the ordinance. And we may come forward in the future with more amendments, but this is the amendment we have tonight.
So could I make a motion on the first part to adopt a resolution of the Town Council of the Town of Ross, amending the Town of Ross, May 31, 2023, adopted 2023-2031, sixth cycle housing element?
Second.
Councilmember McMillan?
Aye.
Councilmember Robbins?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Kircher?
Aye.
Councilmember Cool?
Aye.
Mayor Breckus?
Aye.
With a vote of 5, the motion passes.
All right, so we still have before us the second part of item 13, which would be waiver of the first reading and introduction of
So I
ordinance
move,
724. And I believe staff has already addressed that, and we've already discussed it. Is there anything further from anyone in the council? All right. Then, is there a motion?
so I move we approve, waive the first reading, read by title only, and include the edits from staff from today.
Second.
Councilmember McMillan?
Aye.
Councilmember Robbins?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Kircher?
Aye.
Councilmember Cool?
Aye.
Mayor Breckus?
Aye.
With a vote of 5, the motion passes.
All right, so we are going to move on now to planning projects, part 2. Item 14, right-of-way in front of 77 Laurel Grove Avenue, design review and town council consideration of resolution number 2348.
Yes, Mayor Pro Tem and council members, just give me a minute to bring this up and we'll get going on this item. Okay, that didn't work. Where? Hey, Cindy? So where's the share? See this up there? Okay, great. Thank you. Okay. Again, Mayor Pro Tem and Town Council, Rich Simonich, Public Works Director. Tonight, the Town of Ross, as the applicant, is requesting approval of design review for a retaining wall within the present and pending right-of-way of Laurel Grove Avenue in front of 77 Laurel Grove. The wall is just over 100 feet long, or will be just over 100 feet long, and just over, or just under 4 feet high. It's over the 4 foot limit as measured from the top of footing, which caused the trigger of the design review. But the actual visible portion of the wall should be less than 4 feet at its height. So I got a brief presentation on this project. We also have a request for the town council to chime in on some pavement coloring that we'll get to a little bit later in the presentation, this quick presentation. So this up here on the screen is a rendering of what the wall would look like after the project is completed. So the project is needed because of part of the Laurel Grove Safe Pathways Project 2B, which is proposed for construction early next year, hopefully before the summer. We're going to be realigning slightly Laurel Grove, moving it away from the creek and a little bit closer to the and within the current property of 77 Laurel Grove, so that we needed this retaining wall to give us that a little bit extra room so we can fit the pathway, which will be on the creek side of this stretch of the road. This, let's see, so this is what the facade of the wall looks like. So this was unanimously approved by the ADR, and the residents at 77 Laurel Grove are very happy with the selection of the facade. The wall will be a reinforced concrete wall, and then they'll come in and they'll place this facade over the concrete. So it should look pretty nice. So this is what the plan is for Laurel Grove Phase 2B. So coming up Laurel Grove from Sir Francis Drake, this is Monte Alegre. This is the private driveway up to those properties up there off of Laurel Grove. So Phase 2A ended right about here, just after Monte Alegre. So Phase 2B will be completing the pathway up here just past Canyon Road. And these areas of darker shading, that's areas where new pavement is going in. And these areas of the very dark shading is where this colored pattern concrete will be going in at Canyon. And it currently exists in a color, sort of a safety red color here at Monte Alegre, and then further down at Walters. So we're going to look at 4 different coloring tonight that were recommended by the Safe Pathways Task Force as an alternative color to this safety red, which we got some complaints from the neighbors that it was a little bit too much, or wasn't really in line with the neighborhood feel of Ross. Some people did actually like it. Some residents actually, they wanted to remain anonymous, but they did actually like that color. But we're all for moving forward with a more of a beige type color, and we'll take a look at those samples here in a little bit. And there they are. So these are the colors that were suggested by the design, or the Safe Routes Task Force. So the design review and the residents living around the area like this San Diego beige color. And this is a pretty good, it's a photograph, but it's a pretty good rendering of what the coloring would look like. It's a very, it's called San Diego Buff. It's a beige color. And when we come to the end of the presentation, I'd kind of like, if you will, council members, kind of let me know if that color looks good to you, or you want to stay with the safety red or some other color. But we'd like, I'd kind of like you to chime in. This is not a design review item. This is just kind of a courtesy outreach to get your input on that. And also, we have some landscaping proposed. This is also not part of design review. We have less than 2,500 square feet of landscaping that we're going to be putting in, because as we widen the roadway towards the residents at 77 Laurel Grove, we are going to be removing some trees and some screening during construction. So we are currently working with the residents who live here at 77 Laurel Grove as to the type of plantings that's consistent with the species that are currently going in around Ross. And we'll have that plan ready to go when we bring the entire Phase 2B of the Safe Routes project back to council probably sometime in the council meeting in February. So with that, that's the end of my report. And so staff recommends that the town council adopt the resolution 2348 approving design review for this project. Again, the town of Ross is the applicant, and thank you very much. I'm here to answer any questions.
All right, thank you very much. Does any member of the council have any questions of the staff and applicant? Mayor Breckus.
Yeah, I just don't really understand what coloring these corners does and why we don't have a problem there with safety. And I guess what my question is one option to just have no color?
That's a great question. So this was an item that was brought forward by the Safe Routes Task Force folks as the purpose of the coloring is to have a location as kind of a safe haven for pedestrians, since we're not putting in crosswalks to allow the residents who live on the opposite side of the pathway to get to that side of the road where the pathway is. It was thought that providing these safe havens at these intersections would be a place that stands out where pedestrians can wait and make sure traffic has gone by before they cross over. The reason we aren't putting in actual crosswalks in these locations is because there are no sidewalks on the opposite side, either coming down from Canyon or Monte Alegre or Walters Road. So we don't put in crosswalks to where one side there's no sidewalk. We don't put in crosswalks to nowhere really. So in lieu of that, the Safe Routes Task Force folks wanted to implement this pattern concrete area. So I suppose it is, there's no requirement. There's no requirement with the grant funding that we received that we do this. But the folks who recommended it seem to think it's a good idea to have this place for pedestrians to have a zone where they know they're out of the traveled way. So short answer is yes, we could not do any colored pavement, but it was recommended by the Safe Routes Task Force.
And I'm sorry, who is Safe Routes Task Force? Who are these individuals, and what's their background?
So primarily it was the David Parisi and his group of traffic consultants and then I'm not sure who the other folks are on the Safe Routes Task Force, but it was mainly the Parisi group.
Well, it still seems like a solution in search of a problem. Anyway, go on.
Could I just add something? Safe Routes is a division of TAM, and I've been the representative. And TAM has also provided us with some of the grant funding to get the pathway built, correct?
That's correct.
Yes.
So if it's not a requirement, why are we looking at red and tan? Why don't we look at, like a light gray or something that kind of blends into the road a little bit more? It's clear that it's a different area, but it's not such an eyesore.
We could come back with a different coloring if that's the desire of the council.
I mean, if of the two, I think that the tan is better than red, but why even have tan? I mean, I think it'll show up. I think it won't blend into the, surrounding scenery, but gray might do both. Gray might be enough to set it off as a safe area, but it might not be so jarring. That's my opinion.
My feeling is a gray, after about 2 years, you'd no longer see it, and you'd have the same effect of not having a color. I mean, the idea is we want a place that's visible to traffic. We'd want at least something that is that maybe blends in with the background, with the terrain, but isn't too blaring. So that's my opinion.
I think this is one of those instances where we have to think about what is this going to have? What effect is this going to have in the future? And I can see people in future cases wanting to tell us what color or suggest what color they want other than what would ordinarily be required. Red would provide the greatest safety probably, and I think the choice is between red or nothing. And I'm not sure how we ought to implement that, if we ought to go back to this task force and ask them, do they want red or nothing? But I'm concerned about the future effects of starting to let people dictate what color, what shade of tan we're going to have on the pavement.
Yes, I mean, we can definitely, there's two things. So we can revisit this, the selection of the coloring, and staff could ask for if there are alternates, or is it okay, or can they recommend that we just do not do any coloring at all? That's not part of tonight's decision to adopt design review. So staff could come back with that if desired.
Elizabeth, yes, I'm sorry. Mayor Breckus.
Thank you. But did you open it up for public comment? Because I don't have a question. I just had a comment.
It's still staff question or council questions to staff. We haven't.
Okay. I'll wait then until it's time to bring back to council.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else on council have questions for staff before we do open it up? All right, then we'll open it up for public comment. Does anyone present tonight wish to be heard on this issue? Anyone on Zoom?
David P.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
That's David Peterson. I live at 307 Upper Torian in Ross, and we drive down the street there on Laurel Grove regularly, and the red painting on the four corners looks ridiculous. I don't believe it is any place else in the town of Ross. We don't need safe havens for people crossing on Shady Lane or Laurel Grove or Lagunitas. Why should we be painting the street red at various places on one single street in town? I think you should be better off with absolutely nothing. That's my comment.
Thank you. Does anyone else wish to be heard on Zoom? All right, then we will bring it back to the council for discussion, and Mayor Breckus.
Well, ever since this color appeared, I've been racking my brains trying to figure out what possible safety effect it is. I was trying to think if it was to avoid cars from parking in that area, I mean, all I can say is I cannot imagine that the reason why they want this is so that pedestrians know, based on the color of a corner, that that's where they're supposed to congregate and not in other places. I mean, I think it's beyond silly. And I just think that we should, it looks terrible. It's totally unnecessary. It serves no safety purpose whatsoever. And I think it's just kind of a ridiculous thing. And I think we should really, I know that there are public works manuals that come up with these ideas, and every year they adopt new ideas, and we should do this way and that way. And I just think we should get away from that. This is not necessary. It's ugly. And it is a complete solution in search of a problem. So I would be really supporting of getting rid of this thing.
Councilmember McMillan.
I disagree. I think we are not safety experts or traffic control experts. And I walk my dog on that street a lot, and people are going really fast. and swerving out into the shoulder. And if I have a kid who lives up one of those streets and I'm sending that kid to Ross School on his or her own, I want to be sure that that kid is as safe as possible. So I guess my recommendation would be to take these concerns back to David Parisi and see what his expert opinion is in terms of, should we have it bright red? Should we have it the Sonoma? Should we just leave it black? You know, what are the risks that we're taking on by keeping it as it is?
And I just
Councilmember
have a
Robbins.
comment about the color, though it's really not, for me to pick the color, but I think the red is really ugly, and if a color is helpful, and if that tan color is also considered helpful, I would certainly choose that.
Councilmember Cool.
I agree with Julie that we should take it back and see what David Parisi has to say about it and go with his recommendation. He knows more about traffic safety than any of us.
In any case, we only need to approve the resolution, right? We don't have to pick a color.
Right, we're just approving the resolution for the design review, the retaining wall, and staff understands that will come back at a later time with more information as to why we need this coloring, or maybe we don't need this coloring, and from the experts. We'll bring that back.
Then I move we approve Resolution 2348.
Councilmember McMillan? Councilmember Robbins?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Kircher?
Aye.
Councilmember Cool?
Aye.
Mayor Breckus?
Aye.
With a vote of 5, the motion passes.
All right, moving right along. The next item is number 15, 23 Ross Common, number 4B, use permit to operate an educational service. So first, is there a staff presentation?
Yes, there is a staff presentation.
Mr. Waltering, thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, council members. The Ross Bridges use permit is before you this evening, and I'd like to give you a little bit of background and then kind of go through what is being proposed. In terms of basic background, Ross Bridges began operating at this location at 23 Ross Common, Unit 4B, in March of 2021. And they began operating without receiving or applying for a conditional use permit, and a conditional use permit would be required for this proposed use. It's an educational service use. Later in 2022, the town staff received a complaint about this proposed use in terms of it not having a required conditional use permit, and also concerns about traffic and also noise. Staff reached out to the applicant, the current applicant, and indicated a conditional use permit would be required. They applied for a conditional use permit and provided background information about their operation, and also have allowed staff to come on the property and view their operation. So in terms of what we have here, Ross Bridges provides a number of different services. They provide transitional kindergarten, they provide after-school daycare, they provide tutoring, they provide camps, they provide a range of services. They have 2 staff members, and then they have a cap of 12 students. So in terms of the operation, staff looked at what they're providing in terms of services, number of students, staff, And then hours of operation. Hours of operation are Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. In the municipal code that governs this particular district, this type of use is not specifically listed as a permitted use or as a conditional use. However, as stated in the staff report, there's a provision in the code that indicates that the town council can determine if another use that's not listed is similar to one of the listed uses. The proposed use could be allowed with a conditional use permit. So staff looked at, well, what are the range of uses permitted in this district, this downtown district? And you find retail, you find offices, you find a range of uses listed in the staff report. And as we looked at those uses, whether it's a restaurant, a retail establishment, an office, and looked at the staffing, the number of students, the relative activity compared to other permitted as of right and other uses that may be allowed with a conditional use permit, our determination basically is that the impact of Ross Bridges is no greater than other uses that are permitted as of right in that zoning district or with a conditional use permit. So that was a basic finding based on visiting the site, meeting with an instructor, watching operations, and doing research. We also looked at our general plan policies and goals and evaluated those in relation to this proposed use. So again, referring to our staff report that we provided to you, if you look under the general plan goals and policies 2.1, it states, preserve uses in the commercial area of the town that serve local residents and reduce the need to drive to other areas. 8.4, maintain the town-owned Ross Common areas linked to uses and activities at Ross School and linked to the town's downtown area as the central recreation, gathering, and local shopping area of Ross. Maintain the downtown area as an attractive, pedestrian-friendly, small retail business area. Encourage smaller scale housing units mixed with commercial uses. So really a mix of uses, local serving in support of the Ross School and other activities in the downtown area. 8.6, encourage and enhance community gathering places such as downtown, the Ross Common, and the post office. Support activities of Ross Recreation, Ross School, and the Marin Art and Garden Center. And then 8B, modify downtown commercial zoning, and this is suggested if needed. Revise commercial zoning in the downtown to prohibit offices and storefront locations to encourage a mixed use housing environment. Encourage uses that are local serving and would contribute to the vitality of downtown. In meeting with the staff at Ross Bridges, we found that many of the students are coming from Ross School. And as you're familiar with the property, the suite 4B is within the building. It's not facing the street, it's within the building. We're informed that the parents, nannies, support staff bring the students to the programs, various programs. They're brought to the programs. Occasionally there's a bicyclist, but typically they're brought to the program. When you look at the zoning district itself, those goals and policies were general plan goals and policies. But when you look at the zoning, and this is the local service commercial, CL zoning district, it states that the uses in this district really should be local serving, provide for the local convenience of people within the community. As we looked at proposed operations, the project description, general plan goals and policies, the very zoning district, and observed operations. Our sense is that what's being proposed here could be, certainly could be, considered similar to other uses that are allowed in this zoning district. So before you tonight is a request from the applicant, from Ross Bridges, to make that determination, to consider and make that determination that this proposed educational service use, as described in the staff report and here in the presentation, is similar to other permitted or conditional uses. And we have prepared a resolution for your consideration in the event that you want to go forward and determine that this is a similar use. I placed at the dais an updated resolution because I apologize, the condition numbering was incorrect. And so the conditions were not changed, the recommended conditions. Only the numbering was changed to be accurate, and I apologize for that inaccuracy. But before you tonight is Resolution 2343, and it does have the citations, and it also includes conditions of approval. Well, condition 1 really refers to what I showed you earlier, hours of operation, the number of students, to make sure that what's proposed is indeed what they provide in terms of service, staff, students, hours, that they maintain any required licensing from the state, that if they need to do any interior improvements or improvements, that they obtain building permits, that in terms of traffic and drop-offs, that there will be no queuing. We didn't observe any queuing per se, but there will be no queuing. And that the staff monitor parking and drop-off. And what we were told in meeting with staff is that oftentimes staff will actually go and help escort students to the facility. They would have to, of course, obtain an encroachment permit if they want to do anything in the public right-of-way. The town has noise regulations, noise standards. They certainly would need to comply with those noise standards, as other businesses would need to comply. They would need to obtain a sign permit, going through the standard town process for that. And they need to abide by these conditions. And if there's a need to modify the conditions, they would have to come back and request an amendment. And there's the standard indemnification provision condition at the end of the conditions here in the resolution. So that concludes my report. I'd be happy to respond to any questions, but this is to you for consideration. Do you find this to be a similar use to other permitted and conditional uses within this district? And we have a resolution for your consideration tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Does any member of the council have questions? Councilmember McMillan.
Yeah, just a couple questions. I know we received a lot of letters in support of this business, and I'm just wondering if you know how many we received.
The letters in support, last I heard, and the town manager may be able to respond more specifically, but almost 60 or about 60 is what I heard. No?
No, but I actually wrote down the names and counted them up this afternoon myself. Although it seemed like 60, but actually it was 37 emails in support besides the applicant. And a couple of those, however, or more like a handful, were written on behalf of 2 people. Okay, so.
And how many letters did we receive opposing this?
I believe 1.
A handful of letters of correspondence, but from the same person.
Okay. And then you mentioned a lot about providing service for the local community, and I'm just wondering if there's any restriction on the enrollment that it be a Ross student or a Ross family.
I'm not aware of that stipulation. What I did hear, though, in talking to a staff person, was that many of the students are coming from the Ross School, but I'm not aware of any stipulation that they must reside in Ross. I'm not aware of that.
Are there any other questions? Council member?
So just a quick question. So from your, research and talking, it sounds like you feel that this use could be similar to other permitted or conditional uses, in which case this could be approved. Is that right?
Yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, well, so that, I think, concludes the staff presentation. The applicant, does the applicant wish to be heard? Mr. Salter. And this is, you have 15 minutes to present, and you can certainly reserve some of that time for any rebuttal if you wish.
Okay, thank you. First of all, I want to thank the members of the community that have shown up tonight. For people our age that have young children, it's particularly difficult to come to council during these hours. I know there are some people on Zoom, but I really just wanted to say thank you so much for the people that actually came in tonight in support of our business. And thank you to the council for hearing this application for our use permit to operate in Ross. We are a small woman-owned business that offers a variety of educational services to town residents. I serve as more of the financial and back end, but the women who create the magic are sitting over here, my wife Tracy Salter and Janine Gallardo, and they are the face of the business, and they're the ones who primarily make everything happen every day for these children in this amazing community. Our programs serve a vital need in the community for early education, after school enrichment, and tutoring. Specifically regarding early education, we offer a TK program to bridge the gap between preschool and kindergarten. The Ross School does not offer this program, nor do any other preschools in the immediate area. We have been operating in Ross since 2021, and since that time have served approximately 70 families in the community. The vast majority of our families, approximately 84%, are Ross residents. Our impact on the downtown commercial district is minimal. We are a small school with a maximum capacity of 12 students at any one time. Most of our students walk to and from our programs, and we generate minimal noise or disruptions to the neighbors. Our teachers have significant experience working with young learners, having taught for over 15 years in public education, and carry multiple teaching certifications and credentials. We strive to make an impact in everything we do. We help children realize their full potential, overcoming any learning obstacles that may be in their way. You have received dozens of letters from families sharing how Ross Bridges have touched their lives. Nothing says it better than the experience working with us. I would like to share one story from a Ross resident, Kim Letter, with whom we have had the pleasure of working with all 3 of her children. Dear Council, I am writing today in support of Ross Bridges' application for a use permit. I cannot overemphasize how critical this business is to our family here in Ross, and how devastating its closure would be to us. All 3 of my children have attended Ross Bridges in some capacity. When we first moved to Ross in the middle of the pandemic, my older 2 children found themselves behind high academic standards of Ross School. Thanks to the tutoring they received from Ross Bridges, they are both now thriving academically. Janine was absolutely instrumental in developing the reading skills. My son, who was in kindergarten at the time we moved to Ross, barely knew his alphabet thanks to the gaps from the pandemic. Fast forward to today, he is a voracious reader that I cannot get books out of the library fast enough for him. This would not have been possible without Ross Bridges. Tracy and Janine were also key in spotting my daughter's early signs of ADHD. Her diagnosis in the 4th grade was life-changing to her academic success, and she is now a thriving 5th grader thanks to their incredible work. My youngest is a current TK student at Ross Bridges, and to say that she loves her school would be a gross understatement. She is absolutely obsessed with Ross Bridges and is often sad on the weekends because it isn't a school day. Every day I hear complete rundown of the experience she had at school and how much fun she had with her adored friends. This group of 7 children has bonded in a way that I have never seen with a preschool children before. When any one of them needs help, they all rush to assist. It is truly magical. I cannot imagine this little group losing their school. It would be absolutely heartbreaking to them and a huge blow to the families of this community. At a time when we are in childcare crisis in this country, Ross Bridges provides critical after-school childcare. They are the only option in town for working parents of kindergarten students who cannot get out earlier than the rest of the school. Our town is also in desperate need of more preschools, not fewer. We already have families signing up for preschool when their children are newborns and still not getting a spot. The loss of one of our already slim preschool options would be hugely detrimental to our community. I avidly support the tight controls that we have as a town for what types of business go into downtown, both for maintenance of our small town feel and for the safety of our kids. Ross Bridges is exactly the type of business that we do want in our town. They are laser focused on serving this community. Every single one of the current pre-K students will go to Ross School next year for kindergarten. And I've already mentioned the key role they play for Ross School elementary families. They may be the single most community-focused business we have in town. I humbly and pleadingly urge you to approve Ross Bridges' use permit application so they can continue to do the great work they are doing for Ross families. Ross Bridges is an absolutely critical component to the thriving future of the Ross communities. Thank you for your time. I'll take any questions you may have.
Does any member of the council have questions for the applicant at this time? No, none? All right, well, thank you very much. At this time, we'll open this up for public comment. I understand there are supporters of this measure here tonight. Thank you for taking the time to come down here. I know it is a sacrifice. We're happy to hear anything you have to say. We have received a lot of correspondence from supporters, and anything we've received, we've read. But if you wish to be heard, please do come forward to the microphone, and we're happy to hear anything you have to say. Would anyone like to address us? Yes, please. So normally these comments, public comment is limited to 3 minutes. Depending on the number of people who would like to speak, I would request you keep your comments as brief as you can. As I mentioned, we have received a lot of support.
I'm going to be
But
very
we
short.
appreciate
actually.
your making the effort, so thank you.
Yeah, no problem. I'm going to be very short because that actually was my letter that Matt just read. So you know my feelings already. But one thing that was that struck me as I was listening to a lot of the comments is specifically on the traffic. As someone who's there every day at drop off and pickup, I just want to make a note that, again, every pre-K kid there is a younger sibling of the Ross School students. And so there's no incremental traffic whatsoever. Every family that is coming to do drop off and pick up at Ross Bridges is already coming into town for Ross School pickup and drop off, often on foot, as noted. And really, if you think about it, I think that there would be an incremental traffic increase if we had to drive elsewhere for our preschool. So a walking distance preschool from Ross School has a really great effect on the walkability of the town and the traffic control. That's all I'm going to add, since again, Matt already read my letter. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to address the council? Yes, please come forward. And if you would, please state your name.
Hi, Simon Etherington, 121 Lagunitas. My son George attends Ross Bridges, and I have nothing bad to say about Ross Bridges. He's had an incredibly wonderful year, and we love it. I don't really want to speak to the specifics of the zoning. I know that zoning administrators have broad discretion to determine use, and I do in the staff report and the communication, there was somewhere buried in there when I read through, there were some comments made about the character of those who run the school. And I would just say that I would not put my child in a school that I didn't think was well-run, and I would take my child out of a school had I learned that anything, that if any of the teachers or administrators were not of the highest character. My child's education and well-being is of the highest order, and that's all I really care about. And I'm very, very happy with Ross Bridges. So thank you.
Thank you.
Council, thank you again for listening to this. I'm Mike Millman, 7 Upper Ames. You all have been incredible to the town. I would just underscore 3 points. We have had our second child now go through the program. We are part of the 7, Emma, who is 4 years old. The program has transformed who she is as a person already. The second point I'd make is that our son, who's now 8, came to the program when we were transitioning to Ross. He was behind because of COVID. Ross Bridges was absolutely critical in getting him to the place to be able to get into Ross School properly. And thirdly, I would underscore the character of the people that run it. They are brilliant, they are empathetic, they're supportive, and they provide one of the most instrumental benefits we have in our town. For that, I support this with 100% conviction. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hello, Town Council. My name is David Allen Hughes. I'm just getting over the tail end of a cold, so please forgive my voice here. First of all, thank you for your leadership and your service to this community. While I know most of you, I'll reintroduce myself briefly. As I said, I'm David Allen Hughes. I'm the director of the Ross Preschool in downtown Ross. We're a 501c3 nonprofit that leases space from St. John's Church. When I was younger, my family lived on Shady Lane. I have fond memories of walking to Ross School, of getting sandwiches at Eddie's, biking to the Quick Stop to get slushies. It was a really wonderful place to grow up, and some of my closest friendships originated during my years here in Ross, and I continue to have family and very close friends here as well. The town of Ross is a community that I love and one that I'm honored to serve. This past weekend, the owners of Ross Bridges broadcast an email throughout the community that falsely accused me of being associated with someone who apparently was complaining about their program. To set the record straight, their accusation is without merit and is, to the best of my knowledge, false. Included in the same email was yet another baseless accusation that I had previously tried to restrict their access to Pixie Park. This also is untrue. In fact, it's something the applicant, based on clear communications received by the Pixie Park Board, knew to be untrue at the time they sent the message. Most recently, the Pixie Park Board shared the following. We learned that Ross Bridges has made some recent public statements that our co-president, David Allen Hughes, tried to prevent them from using Pixie Park last year. These statements are untrue. David did not try to prevent Ross Bridges from accessing the park. I believe that knowingly making false statements and baseless accusations is repugnant, and it is my opinion that this type of behavior should not be tolerated by any person nor any community. It does not serve our community well to make personal accusations, let alone false accusations. And I hope in the future the focus will be on the issues at hand instead of distracting from the issues with baseless personal attacks. In the past few years, I've spoken publicly in front of several local and state boards and commissions, all with the same message. Marin County needs more childcare spaces. I had originally been planning to attend today's meeting to support this application, and then, due to these highly personal and unfounded attacks made against me by Ross Bridges, I hesitated. However, putting my personal feelings for the applicants aside, my greater responsibility is to the children and families in our community. As most of us know, being a parent can be incredibly hard and stressful, and I want to help do my part to reduce the stress by ensuring that families in our community are able to enroll their child in a childcare program that aligns with their family values. We are fortunate to have several wonderful childcare programs in our community, and I believe there is enough demand and need to add more childcare. In short, I encourage the Town Council to approve the application made by Ross Bridges. In addition, in the spirit of fairness, I hope this council believes it is important to apply a uniform framework and consistent standards. In the event the Ross Bridges application is approved, which I believe it should be, if appropriate, I would encourage the council to review the conditions of approval that this council recently applied to the Ross Preschool's use permit application in order to apply consistent conditions. Just to finish up, please. I recall how nervous I was when I first went through this process with all of you. I continue to appreciate the thoughtfulness and professionalism of the council. I also vividly remember when a neighbor came up to this podium to share their views on our application. I didn't know they would be in attendance, and I felt certain that they would share nothing but concerns, and I was happily surprised when they spoke up in support of our application. So, in the spirit of paying it forward, I support having more childcare options in town, and I encourage the town council to approve the application for Ross Bridges. Again, thank you all of you for your service to the community.
Yes, thank you. Anyone else care to be heard in the room? Yes, please, if you come up to the podium. And please state your name. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Erica Bell. I also wrote in an email, so you probably heard my support already for Ross Bridges. I'm one of the parents of one of the 7 children that attends for TK, and just wanted to come out tonight to again show my support for Ross Bridges. But I just want to quickly say thank you to David. It's been very stressful as a parent and huge supporter of Bridges this week to see any back and forth between the adults that might have created anger, frustration. I think at the end of the day, all of us really just want what's best for the children. That's why we live in this town. And so I just hope that you can give them the permitting to continue. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to be heard? Okay, well, thank you. Is there anyone on Zoom?
There's a lot of people on Zoom. Let me see if anybody has their hand raised.
Okay.
No hands raised.
All right. We'll close the public comment now, and I wonder if would the applicant care to make any further statement or closing statement? Yes, please.
I just wanted to say thank you to David Allen Hughes for supporting our application. And we know that sometimes there can be acrimony as businesses are trying to sort themselves out and figure out their way in this world. And we're a new business. And I appreciate that despite some of the acrimony that we have, his support for this application speaks volumes of how important this is to this town. And I think that when you think about what should be permitted downtown and what this community needs, this is a really important example of what this zoning needs to include in future iterations of the general plan. And it's important for you to recognize that the downtown could be vital. It could have vitality. It could be a center for so many of these families to live and breathe and walk to these essential services if you would amend the zoning to allow these types of businesses to be there by right. And I want noted on the record that we had to pay $6,000 for this permit application. For many small businesses, that is not an insignificant amount of money. That's a lot of money when you're starting a business. And I think that the town council needs to think about how you make Ross a more welcoming place for business to take place and for services to flourish that are needed by townspeople. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, we'll now bring the matter back to council for discussion and action. Any discussion? I'm sorry, Councilmember Cool.
For me, this is a no-brainer. This is a very valuable asset to the downtown, and we should have no hesitation about finding that this type of activity clearly falls within what was intended by the town council in some years past when they set up considerations of what was appropriate or not. So for me, it's a no-brainer.
All right, and I see Mayor Breckus has her hand raised.
Well, just echoing what Beach says, I do think this is a great way to make our town more walkable. In the future, I would like to, take a look at that use permit fee, because I agree with the comment that it's more than it should be. And I'm sure staff spent a lot of time on this because of the project and the way it came about. But I think that if we allow it as a matter of right, it would be easier to process and we could make it less burdensome on a business. Thank you.
Any other comments?
Can I make a motion?
Yes.
I would like to move to approve resolution number 2343.
Second.
Councilmember McMillan?
Aye.
Councilmember Robbins?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Kircher?
Aye.
Councilmember Cool? Mayor Breckus?
Aye.
With a vote of 5, the motion passes.
All right, thank you all for appearing here tonight. So the next item that we'll take up now would be item 16, 20 Allen Avenue Design Review and Town Council Consideration of Resolution 2347. And staff report, please.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, and council members. Tonight, the applicant at 20 Allen is requesting approval for a design review to renovate the existing landscape over 2,500 square feet. The project is proposing to install new cobblestone driveway apron as well as repair the existing driveway with stabilized decomposed granite to meet the Ross Valley Fire Department regulation. Additionally, the project includes a new bluestone pathway, an entry walkway, a rear patio, and a vegetable garden. The applicant is proposing to also add new trees and shrubs along the perimeter of the lot to provide more screening. A new pool is proposed in the front of the house measuring 12 by 24 feet and the pool equipment with an enclosure for noise dampening on the west side of the garage. On November 14th, the ADR reviewed the project was reviewed by the ADR group. The ADR members supported the design of the pool as shown, since the pool was not in the setback and within the buildable envelope. The ADR group provided feedback focusing on the concrete patio, the pool equipment, and the screening on the property. The applicant have revised the plans and removed the concrete patio around the pool and instead added artificial turf. Also added an enclosure to the pool equipment and worked with the adjacent neighbors to provide sufficient screening. As shown on sheet L2 of the project plans, the impervious surface is increasing by a huge amount due to the long driveway, which requires to be impervious per the Ross Valley Fire Department requirement mentioned earlier. In order to mitigate this, the applicant is proposing a bioretention area and will also improve the existing drainage swells to mitigate the impact of increasing impervious surfaces and meet the no net runoff policy. I do have the landscape architect here if the council has any questions in that matter. And staff asks that the town council consider resolution 2347 approving design review for 20 Allen. That concludes my presentation.
Thank you. Is there anything further, Mr. Waltering?
No, nothing further, but as the assistant planner indicated, there is a representative here that could respond to your questions, should you have them, regarding landscape improvements, impervious surface, et cetera. Thank you.
Thank you. So on Zoom, the landscape architect is on Zoom?
He's here.
Oh, I'm sorry, in the background. Oh, I'm sorry, Bear Breckus had her hand up. Is that for a question, I assume?
Yeah, I just didn't understand why the story poles weren't provided for the pool and the improvements.
So they weren't provided. I did not reach out to the owner and applicant to go ahead and put an outline for the pool to show where the pool was going to be at.
Isn't that just like something that, I mean, is that something that staff normally would tell the applicant? Isn't it something that, our forms provide, hey, you've got to do this?
Correct. It's part of the checklist, which the owner and applicant should review. But as staff, we do usually remind them of when to put story poles up.
If I could, through the Mayor Pro Tem, it is fairly standard that staff would reach out as a reminder. I don't believe we did that in this case. We apologize for that. As the assistant planner indicated, it is on the checklist, but typically there is a call placed, an email sent as a reminder, and we apologize for that.
Any other questions? Councilmember McMillan.
Yeah, I have a question. I don't know who can answer this, but I'm kind of troubled by the huge amount of impervious surfaces. And so I'm wondering, does the council just abdicate its authority when the fire department gets involved? We have no possibility of suggesting an alternative. If the fire department says it has to be decomposed granite, that's it. That just doesn't seem right.
Yes, Councilmember McMillan. So we did talk to the fire department about options for the driveway. One of the options is to have the permeable pavers with a, we usually require like a 12-inch sub-base reservoir area to mitigate the increased impervious surface. But the applicant wanted to go with this decomposed granite impervious surface. And so I worked with the applicant to make sure that the runoff is mitigated per our policy. It's not an ordinance per se, but it's a policy that I review. They run a portion of the new impervious surface through bioretention. And in this case, they've got an extensive swale that runs the length of the driveway that they'll drain into, and they're going to improve that too. So to answer your question, we did give the fire department some options, and they went with this decomposed granite idea, which is the impervious route, but the fire department did.
Is there any chance that we or the applicant could go back to the fire department and, based on feedback received tonight, get them to reconsider? Because I think that's a huge mistake when you're in the floodplain like that property is. I think you want as much pervious material as possible, and they're already putting in AstroTurf. There's basically nothing except those side little areas that is pervious.
Let me defer to the applicant. If you had the choice of pervious pavement or the DG, which would you go for? I might have spoken out of turn. This might have been the applicant's choice. So. Yeah.
If I may, why don't we finish with questions first with staff, and then
all right. Any other questions of staff? I did have a question about the bioretention basin. Is that something that is that something that would be determined, the adequacy of the bioretention basin would be determined at the time of issuance of a building permit? I didn't see anything in the resolution that would specify how effective the size or capacity of the bioretention basis would need to be.
Right. The Public Works Director can respond to that.
Yes. Normally when I review a design review submittal, the planning submittal, my review is whether the application is complete or not. So I saw that they are introducing measures that would mitigate the increased runoff. So yes, so at the building permit phase, that's where I would review their calculations, whether it's technically correct and they've met the requirements of our no net runoff policy. But in the planning stage, I just make sure that they're showing the intent, and they've set aside locations where they will be able to do the bioretention and meet the no net runoff.
But the requirement would be that the bioretention basin be sufficient to result in no net increase.
Yes, I have a calculation that we've worked out with other members of the engineering community that provides the calculation that the increase in runoff for like the 2-year 24-hour storm is attenuated by these bioretention basins. So we have the technical backup that it's a efficient way to do it. In fact, the town of Ross has doubled the requirement as an extra conservative measure to make sure we have this retention.
And there is sufficient space on the property to accommodate an adequate retention basin?
There appears to be. So if they are, when they come down to providing the building permit and grading and drainage plans, and it shows they're unable to, then we can't issue the building permit until they've done more bioretention areas to meet the requirement. So that's where the rubber hits the road, is when we review the building permit and grading and drainage plans. And if they can't, then I can't approve my review for the no net runoff policy.
Thank you. Council member or Mayor Breckus.
Well, I think there's a little bit of confusion on the two different policies, because you can't increase runoff off the property. So you can't add water into the storm drain. But then there's, if you add impervious surfaces, you're supposed to not add, but mitigate and decrease. So those are two different ideas. And I think what I'm hearing is that we're not going to add water into the storm drain, but it is a significant increase. And in the past, when we've had, we don't really see a lot of that proposed, but when we have, there has been analysis of that. And I would say, there wasn't a lot of analysis on it on the staff report. And maybe in the future, what we should be doing is asking the applicant to give us better understanding of that. You're increasing. And so what is your bioretention basin doing to mitigate that? And that's where I thought it was a little confusing.
I think at this point, we're simply asking questions of staff, though. Perhaps we can, when we get to the council discussion portion of this, we can explore this further.
Staff could provide, I think the Public Works Director could provide a little bit more clarification with respect to the comments made by the mayor.
Right. So there's two methods to mitigate the no net run, or to enforce the no net runoff policy. There is on-site retention, where you allow the water to infiltrate down into the ground. The other one is that you're holding it and releasing it slowly, like you fill up a bathtub and you drain it. You release it slowly, so that you might be producing more volume, but you're matching the rate at which it's flowing off the property. You're slowing down the rate at which it flows off. So maybe it'll continue flowing at a small rate into the storm drain system for another 2 hours, or additional 2 hours than what's done historically. But you're not overburdening the storm drain system, because you're releasing it at a slow rate. So it's a combination of infiltration back into the groundwater system and slowing down the rate of runoff into the storm drain system. So that's how we consider the no net runoff policy application. I hope I didn't confuse the issue more, but it's a combination of infiltration and slowing down and reducing the rate at which the runoff is leaving the property.
All right, thank you. Any further questions? All right, well then we will hear from the applicant. Does the applicant wish to be heard? All right, so if you could please state your name, and you have 15 minutes to present the application to the council. Feel free to reserve time for rebuttal if you wish.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, council members. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Miranda Abrams, and I've been part of the Ross community for almost 2 decades. My family moved here from New York the week before our eldest daughter started kindergarten at Ross School, and we've since had the pleasure of putting 3 children through the school and being part of our community. I am here to say a few words tonight as the interior designer hired by the owner of 20 Allen, Mr. Steve Akram, to work on this project with him. And I've worked with Steve for a few years now as the designer for his previous homes. So as you know, on November 14th, we presented this project to ADR, and Steve and Matthew Kennedy have since addressed all the issues and concerns that came up that evening. The neighbors have all been contacted now and have been given ample opportunity to see the updated landscape plans, the pool and the pool equipment location, which are outside the setbacks and within the building envelope. During design review, the screening was also brought up as an issue for the next door neighbor, but that concern also was resolved. So I'm pleased to say that we have that particular neighbor's full support per the letter in the packet that you received. As a Ross resident and parent, I wanted to add tonight that owning a pool while being a luxury was also a real asset in community building for our family, because it allowed us to share our pool with our children's classmates and their families, which helped us socialize and get to know everybody quite a lot better. So we're hoping to offer the same opportunity for the next owners of 20 Allen. So I'm here, I was just addressing the pool specifically. Anyway, thank you very much for your time in reviewing our project, and I'm going to turn the floor over to our landscape architect.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, council members. I'm Matthew Kennedy. I'm a landscape architect, Costello Kennedy Landscape Architecture out of San Rafael. I've been working approximately 8-10 weeks on this project. David, I've been working with David and when he was interim, and then Alex and now Roberta, as well as Richard, in putting this together. What happened a couple months ago was they went out to the site, they realized and they noticed that the property owner was reaching that 2,500 foot trigger, and therefore it required ADR. Therefore I was retained and have now really just kind of graphically trying to put graphic representation to what has been installed and what is yet to be installed. So when you look at those plans, they're color coded. Gray means it's existing, if you will, and then colored is what is yet to be installed. We went through ADR, as mentioned. They came up with a few different points. One was to go back and do neighborhood outreach with all the neighbors. We've contacted all of them. They've had, as Miranda mentioned, they've had ample time to respond. I offered, showing things and so forth, showing plans and so forth. We did receive a few comments. I did meet with a few people and so forth and address their concerns. They may come up, I don't know if there's letters or not, but I'll be available for answers on that. The main things I think that came out of ADR was that they would like to see the pool reduced in size. We reduced it from 14 feet to 12 feet in width. They wanted the bluestone patio that stretched over the setback line, over the building envelope line, removed. We removed that. The pool equipment had a note that it was enclosed. They wanted a little bit more information, so we drew a little drawing in the last one, and then we've also included acoustic insulation to that, all within the building envelope and adjacent to the garage. And then the neighbor screening issue with the immediate neighbor was addressed. We met with the neighbor. It was addressed. A letter, I believe, is in support, is in your packet. And so additional screening has been installed. Yes, when it comes to the impervious surface, that has been a big issue, especially for me as a landscape architect. I do not like seeing that increase. We met with Rob and Ross Valley Fire Department on a couple of occasions to address this. We also had staff and Roberta meet with them and talk about potential. Our original option or material that we chose was actually a gravel, all permeable. Ross Valley determines this as a fire access road because it's greater than 150 feet from the street. Therefore, it needs to meet pretty much roadway standards. It has to support 60,000-pound vehicle of getting up there and with a hammerhead. And all of those have to withstand that weight. We tried using a PaveSil product, which is rated for heavy equipment to go over. We talked about Grasscrete, all these various different more permeable options. And basically we got a flat out no. We will accept concrete, asphalt, or stabilized, which is essentially mixing concrete or cement with decomposed granite. So they're all impervious. So when we got, and that was late, that was like just before we went into ADR, we got that information. So we quickly revised the drawings to show we essentially now have 4,000 additional square feet of impervious surface that we then have to mitigate and we've been working with Richard on that as to how to do that on this site. And I can answer those questions if there are anything further on that. What we have done briefly here is we have bioretention planters and we have bioswales all within the property. And then on the property line, there is a almost 200 linear foot long ditch, if you will, which is also essentially a bioswale before it gets to the city-owned catch basin at Allen. So what we've done is we've used standards is essentially 4% of area to go through bioretention. Ross has, like was mentioned, has doubled that. So we've taken if you look at sheet L2, we have our DMAs delineated, drainage management areas delineated. Each one of those have been broken down into square footage, like all four downspouts of the house equal X amount of square feet, which means times 8% equals this much we have to then address in terms of retention area or bioswale situation. So that's how we address that. And in that attempt to, and in those plans, we've proved that all of that square footage, we have planting area that we can run that water through and then pick up and then get back out to that existing swale, which eventually gets to, so it's almost double in some extent of how it gets processed through that. And then the last item that was mentioned to me, one by a neighbor, and also Alex mentioned it as well, is the pool safety. We have building permit requires a the pool requires a building permit, which it will have to apply to code. We have an automatic pool cover, which is one of the redundancies, and then we'll have alarms on the door, which is the second one. That's not necessarily noted on the plans. The alarms aren't, the automatic pool cover is, but I just wanted to address that. Other than that, I guess I will reserve my time for after the fact if there's anything after, but I'll open it up to questions.
Any questions?
I want to be sure I understand this issue of how the fire department was involved. do I understand correctly that you initially proposed a pervious surface? Is that right?
Yeah, we had a gravel driveway.
Okay. And the fire department insisted that because of the weight of its truck, you had to have an impervious surface.
Correct.
Thank you.
There is I can't remember the code number, but in the Ross Valley has a code with the number.
All right. If there's no further questions that the council has at this point, we will open it up. Thank you. And we will open this up to public comment. Does any member of the public wish to be heard on this issue? Anyone on Zoom?
There are no raised hands on Zoom.
All right, well then we will bring it back to the council for discussion.
I move we approve 2347.
Second.
Councilmember McMillan? Councilmember Robbins?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Kircher?
Aye.
Councilmember Cool?
Aye.
Councilmember Breckus?
Aye.
The vote of 5, the motion passes.
All right, thank you. So we will then go to the next item. Council correspondence. Has anyone received any correspondence? Any member of the council received correspondence? Okay, there being none. I'm sorry. Mayor Breckus. I believe you're muted.
You're
Mayor.
muted, Mayor Breckus.
Thank you. I've received correspondence in two different respects. One was that the flood district has apparently applied to San Anselmo to do a no baffle project. So we've all kind of been operating under the understanding that it's a baffle, but apparently that the application is not for a baffle. And separately, that the flood district is indicating that it is no longer their obligation to do mitigation, but it is Ross's obligation to do mitigation. And I received that information from both San Anselmo, but also a resident who had a meeting, a Ross resident who had a meeting with them. So I think we will be coming forward with another item when staff is ready to discuss further, but I did want to give you that update that I got that correspondence.
Any other correspondence? All right. Item 17B. Are there any future proposals for future council items? None. All right. We will then move on to open time for public expression limited to 3 minutes for items that are not on the agenda. Does anyone, is there any member of the public who wishes to address the council? All right, seeing none, anyone on Zoom with a raised hand?
There are no raised hands on Zoom.
Very good. Then, item 19, we are adjourned. Thank you all. I survived, yeah. I have to apologize to Eric for getting his name wrong. I can't believe I did that. I just didn't even think. That's a pretty good first step. Yeah, okay, thanks, Pete. I've been sitting here, Ben, looking at your cheat sheet here, trying to remember it. I'm just gonna have to read it. Because I mean, I have zero patience for this stuff, and I'm thinking, nope, just go by the script. Don't follow them out. What's that? Yeah, some of this was quite unexpected and particularly complex. I mean, the Branson, I was trying to follow all of that, and I thought,